But I think the next generation of pros will be the best, work the hardest, but also be super smart about how they approach. And I think that's the natural evolution that the league needs to happen.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Craft Podcast. I am joined today by Arnold Hur, Chief Operating Officer at Gen.G Esports. Hey Arnold, thanks for joining.
Yeah, glad to be here. I'm really excited. Love what you guys are doing. So I'm glad we found some time to chat.
The first question we have for all of our guests are, what is your craft?
It's funny that you mentioned that. Like, that was actually a really good question that I thought about. As I saw kind of some of the other podcasts that you do, and I would say that the way I've positioned myself and kind of what I define as my craft, would be, I think about growth, right? Specifically, like, what do you need to do as an organization, in order to kind of get to that next level of growth, wherever you are, right? So I've had a history of doing that. Even when I worked at Google, we were launching a brand new hotel search product, right? When when you're searching for hotels, hotels Los Angeles, like that thing that pops up, I was part of the team that helped kind of launch that on the business and software side. Or before, I was running an e-commerce startup where we were really going from, let's say, not the necessarily the 0 to 1, but really the 1 to 100 level, where we had product market fit. It's an e-commerce business. Really needs to start scaling that up, from, let's say, a pre-series A all the way out to a series C. And then now I jumped in on the growth level, but really from even a starting point where I kind of think of, the position now that I'm in, where we were basically starting the company literally out of a conference room, in San Francisco, and now we're a big esports team, and the esports industry is growing so quickly, but the business models aren't set, right? So I kind of view myself in my role as figuring out, how do I get all the esports side of the business working well, as in how do you win games, how do you compete, how do you do content, but then how do you actually level up the business side so that you can, support all of the esports needs that you have. So that's kind of the way I view my craft, is what are those things that we need in order to get to that next level of growth. And it's kind of a mixture of like marketing, operations, sales, but that's kind of what I like. The fact that, you can kind of mix and match and figure out what it needs and what an organization needs.
Perhaps you could tell me what you think the difference is between like growth and marketing functions, because most of the big companies I've worked at, they just have like a typical marketing department, and marketing departments sometimes talk about growth, but usually people don't have that title. Is this a split between startups and big companies, or is it like a more broader difference?
I would say, it's more relevant for even for big companies only when they're starting like newer ventures or a very early venture, because by definition, I think as a company gets really big, you kind of want to silo a little bit more of the specific roles. But when you're early on, the marketing person needs to know what's happening on the operation side, right? The salesperson needs to know what's happening on the marketing side, right? Like, that alignment is so critical, right, between sales, marketing, and operations, that you kind of need some folks that really understand how growth works. Let me give you an example. So, for instance, we do a lot of sponsorship deals, right? And when we do these sponsorship deals for our teams, we get the jersey and there's like a little patch, and you know with this, because it's such a early industry, that sponsorship patch isn't enough, right? You have to also know, like, okay, what are the big moments in the esports year, right? When can we actually capitalize with big marketing pushes that not are only good for sponsors, but that's also good for our brand, right? So it's not just sales and account management, marketing, and the esports operations. They all have to align and work together, right? Now, if we're the Lakers, the sales team just sells the patch. They already know what price it is. They go out and figure out, which patch it is next year. I think we just found out Russell Westbrook is coming to the Lakers. So you say, hey, great, now we have Russell Westbrook, right? You don't need to know that Russell Westbrook is coming in. It's always nice, but I think that's the key difference, right? When you're at an early stage, and I would say a lot of larger companies are missing this kind of DNA of some folks that really understand what all the different pieces and how they fit. Usually that ends up getting up to the SVP or C level until they really understand. So everybody in the middle doesn't have any idea what's going on in the other division, right? So it's one of those things that I think is the future, and I think more larger companies will do it. Will they actually do the title of growth or not? I don't know because it's kind of hokey. But I do think the difference is that marketing only talks about, hey, marketing what we've already done, versus growth is about creating a better feedback loop between what marketing is doing in operations and sales, so that everybody's really helping churn everything to help grow the company to that next level.
That's awesome. Actually, that's a good segue into growth in esports because I was more active in esports a couple years ago, and a lot of those teams like TSM, Cloud9, Team Liquid still exist, and they're doing super well. I think it's actually super cool that a few new-ish esports team kind of not came out of nowhere, but they really grew a lot in terms of their brand and popularity. So top of mind, it's like Genji, it's 100 Thieves, Sentinels. Those are top three that come to my mind, and they all do things a little bit differently. Can you talk a little bit? I think Genji used to be called something else, and then I think you or the CEO, someone decided to like change the name, and like was that part of your growth strategy?
No, I think it was just like we needed to kind of create our own thing, right? Like we were helping, buy a lot of the teams in order to have an esports team, right? So I think what you're noticing broadly in the esports industry, and when I talk about growth and what I think it takes is, there's a fundamental realization, at least among the smart people in esports, that the traditional esports business model doesn't work. It's an absolute failure. um, you think about the mechanics of it, right? Which is you basically sign a team, you win championships, you give all the prize money to the players, and you sign the players for huge salaries, and then you try to, get paid through sponsorships. That doesn't make any sense, right? And you'll see a lot of leagues that are really struggling with this now, right? Across the world. So I think the smart esports teams are building a business on top. So even some of the names that you've mentioned, like TSM, and Team Liquid, Cloud9, they're all building businesses that are either parallel or, tangential even to kind of the core, what people know as core esports, right? So my view on the market, I'm very negative in general. I come from more of a finance background. I guess that's where it's coming from. Is that like I think actually we're gonna go to, the Game of Thrones thing, like the winter is coming. So that's 100% what I feel, right? If there's 100 esports teams, maybe 30 are left, maybe 20 are left that really matter, right? So I think that's the future that we're facing. And so for me, when I think about our organization, what it takes to grow, survive is also what it takes to grow, right? And so for us, what we're looking at is making sure that we're building a business that actually complementary to our core esports side. So a really good example for us is, and people are doing it different ways, right? Like 100 Thieves is, we're going to do YouTube content and influencers, and that's going to be our big push, right? Like FaZe Clan, that's just a they're just superstars. So they just, you know, Kanye West does Kanye West things, FaZe Clan does FaZe Clan things, and they'll figure it out, right? But TSM, works with Blitz, right? And Team Liquid has the membership and all the other stuff. So for us, we actually started really leaning in towards education, right? So what we mean by that, and what people don't know, is that what we've noticed to be a gap in the market, especially in Asia, where really there isn't a way for you to really learn esports and learn how to be a better competitive player um, in a very easy setting, besides just going to a PC bang, grinding for 14 hours, and then hoping you're getting better. Meanwhile, you're surrounded by toxicity, and you're actually learning anti teamwork, right? Because you just pick the solo carry character, go all in, and then go next if you lose, right? Like that's basically how you. That's basically how you move up the ranks, right? And so and then we had a lot of parents actually come up to us and say, hey, my kid loves games. I have no idea how I'm going to support their passion, right? And then at the same time, we've noticed a lot of universities have a lot of huge interest, UCI included, of saying, hey, this is really cool. We're noticing that, people with an esports background really get involved in the community, really do something that's interesting, and a lot of times they can become huge stars, right? And so for us, we saw this gap in the market. What we launched was the Gen.G Global Academy, and we have different tiers, right? Like most of the people that join really just join after school, to try to like learn how to get better. Parents love it because we're not just teaching them like go play. We're actually teaching them how to get better in an efficient way, so they're spending less time grinding. We're teaching them stuff like teamwork, how to be a good player, how to get feedback, how to do VOD reviews, how to make content, right? Because I think that kind of like so those side skills are really important and oftentimes not taught. Like I'm shocked by how many schools don't teach how to upload a YouTube video. It's crazy, right? Like, and so for us, our business is really leaning in towards the education side. We've established also partnerships with a lot of U.S. universities, because we have these like super talented kids that are super excited to go to the U.S. And some of them even decided, to go full time, and then they get a U.S. high school degree afterwards, right? To really go all in on getting a U.S. Education. So I think that is what's going on in the market, and that's how I view growth. Is we got to figure out our business side, right? Make that grow so that we can fund some of these multi-million-dollar salaries that people are commanding now in esports.
I have so many follow up questions because
Sorry, I ranted a little bit
no, no,
there.
no, this is good. Like it's great because I'm really aligned with a lot of stuff you talked about. So number one, I had a challenger team, so I'm one of the 80% that didn't survive, and part of the reason we didn't survive was because I think I only raised a $2 million seed round, but to have basically a challenger team that was trying to compete in relegation, so you're paying LCS salaries at 2015
Yeah,
timeframe, it's like $1 million a year.
yeah.
So and I thought we were doing things kind of cheap. So and we had like almost no revenue coming in because a few some of our sponsorships are just like we got like Soylent, just like boxes of Soylent, like no cash, right?
Yep, yep.
And even trying to monetize content, it sounds easy, but it's super hard because
It's
you need to get
super hard.
so many views on YouTube to even like crack the algorithm or just a minimum bar to monetize, right? Starting from scratch. So and it's
And
funny
and I-
because
and I would say,
but,
don't you agree?
yeah,
Fans actually don't understand that the majority of esports content that esports teams push are unprofitable if you really look at the costs versus the output versus what you make from YouTube, right?
you are absolutely right. And anyways, back to the Genji Academy.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Uh, what's crazy? I feel good that you're doing this because that was my idea too. So we launched the Ember Academy and back in 2015, and the reason we did it was because we were like, hey, we can't figure out a way to make money, but during the off season, in between the splits, maybe our players can teach people who would come in. And even in 2015, with our, we didn't have that much growth, like really small, like 10K Twitter, but people signed up for our classes. But then we ran out of money, which is a different problem.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's everybody's problem.
it's
Don't
everyone's problem.
worry.
Okay, another thing you mentioned that just so spot on is like the basics, like VOD. So in my UCI class, I tell everyone like, hey, for this assignment, just upload an unlisted YouTube video. And half the people can't do it. It's so hard for them. But I feel like if you're gonna just work in any industry in 2021, you kind of need to know how to do this.
Yep, yep.
Which is also why I got Jimmy on board because we
I
got
do
all these
have to.
videos.
I have to
Yeah,
confess something.
sure.
We're leading hard into TikTok.
Uh
I
huh.
downloaded TikTok and I was like, I'm gonna try to see how to make a video. It
Hmm.
was so hard, man. I'm too old. I'm
Oh my
36,
god.
man. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
dude, there's so many buttons and so many filters. I was like, oh god, this is so much work.
I
And then
I
and then
hear you.
the funny story is, I opened up Snapchat and there's a Snapchat Maps feature now, so you can like see
Uh-huh.
where all your friends are. I had one friend, and that's the person that works at Snapchat as a VP. That's it. And that was my entire map.
Dude, that okay. Two more. I mean, that's hilarious because one of my friends was like employee number 30 at Snapchat, and I didn't get it, and I was like early 30s at the time,
Sure.
and but I just forced myself to connect with them and use it to understand how. And then my biggest regret, I don't know if people, because I think you worked in LA for a couple of years potentially, right?
Yep. Yep.
So being in LA, everyone kind of knew about Snapchat, so people wanted to like invest in it. But the first couple of years when Snapchat was public, the stock was like $3. Like people
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Facebook's gonna crush it," but I mean, they are at all time highs, and I totally regret not believing, not hodling. Um, okay, final comment about VOD. I think you are spot on about VOD. Well, first of all, just to upload or just to learn how to make it's
Yep.
hard. And actually, that's something we're really leaning into at Facebook as well,
Hmm.
because I tell a lot of streamers that if they're making videos already like VOD,
Hmm.
and they put it on YouTube, why not put it on? I mean, I think putting it on Twitch probably doesn't help that much,
Yeah.
but you just put it on Facebook. You already
Yep.
did it. Why
Yep.
not double dip, right? I don't even know if YouTube has any like exclusive VOD contracts. I doubt it. So
I'm sure they do some,
for like the
but
maybe the really big people, I mean,
yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah.
Me and you don't have to worry about it.
Oh yeah, me, yeah, I'm getting nothing. So so yeah, I think VOD is a very exciting like video or video type coming out.
I
Um,
also think, an area of huge growth is, there's a ton of interest globally, and I think people are much more willing to watch content that isn't in their language as well, right?
mhm. Ooh.
And you can even see it in the rise of anime. Like I'm a big anime fan, but like I do think, and I know people hate the auto translations right now, but it's getting really good, right? Like so there's actually like tech changes that are happening. So I think the other part of growth is to kind of see the meta trends and understand how they could create new opportunities for you in the future and be the first to be able to make that move, right? And I've noticed a couple huge auto trends that I think are going to actually change who we view as internet stars, right? So the two things that I see are the quality of audio is getting better and better and better. And what I mean by that is, it's not just like, oh, there's more bandwidth and all of that stuff, but more like, not just like these kind of mics, but AirPods and all of these things, you're able to pick up audio quality much better, which then allows you to transcribe at almost 95% accuracy now, right? And and then that allows you to also then get translations going, right? And I think translations the auto translates that are happening are actually getting better and better and better, especially for specific languages. And I think that really opens up the market longer term. I mean, that's a 5 years down the line kind of thing. It doesn't affect our business today, but I think that's also important for growth is to understand what tech trends are happening, like what TikTok and short form content are doing, how the different algorithm creates a unique opportunity for us as like a very small esports team compared to the FaZe Clans of the world, right? I don't have to worry about the YouTube sub algorithm and all of these things because TikTok is like you get paid, you blow up based on if the content is good or not, or at least that's the
Right,
plan, right? Um, we'll see how it works, but I think that's also a really important part of growth, and I think it's very relevant for people. Like if you don't understand the technology, just like you said, if you don't know what's going on behind the scenes of how to upload that YouTube video, you don't understand, right? How can you be call yourself a marketer if you can't upload a YouTube video, right? So
exactly.
you know,
Um, I think once again, I think you're spot on about anime. It's funny because I'm 37, but I only got into anime like 2 3 years ago. I don't know why. I don't
right.
know what happened to my childhood. I was just I don't know. I guess I'm a bad Asian. I just never like got into it. And during COVID, I watched all of One Piece. I watched all of One Piece
We mean
episode
like the
one.
1,500 episode.
Yes, I watched
Oh
it. Like
Lord,
I am up
well you
to.
had to skip through, right? There's a lot of filler in that one.
No. I watched it all. I'm a completionist. I'm a completionist,
Oh Lord.
and that's bad for me. But I I don't think I may have seen one anime activation with one esports team, but no one has done like
Uh,
some concerted
yep,
effort. I
yep.
forgot who
I
it
think that's like
was.
Team Liquid and Naruto did one.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
Um,
Team Liquid's been doing a lot of like they did Marvel too,
yeah,
so they're
yeah.
really into these co-branding. Um,
I think as well. Speaking of COVID,
mhm,
the way how I feel it affected our industry is more that it accelerated a lot of the undercurrents and trends that were already happening, right? We knew Twitch and live streaming were going to blow up, and more people were doing it. Well, everybody did it, right? For us, we had Sweetie come on and do a cooking show with us, right? That would have never happened pre-COVID because it just live streaming wasn't a thing. It wasn't understood. It was this weird thing that people did on the side on Twitch. But now everybody knows it. Every artist knows what Twitch is. Um, watching content online, engaging with the community online, like all of that stuff really happened. Zoom, right? Before I would have to fly over to LA to do this kind of stuff,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
And it'd be scheduling would be a pain in the butt, right?
Right.
And so I do think it accelerated a lot of the trends that are happening. Even things like I watched Wonder Woman streaming, right? Like
Right, right, right.
that would have been unheard of.
That's true. Right now, the Gen.G Global Academy, is that only in person or is that online as well?
It is so actually it's funny. Speaking of accelerating, we
Yeah.
originally started this thing offline, right?
Right.
Because we literally had to start it because parents of like these kids would come and be like, just come to the door and be like, hey, do you have anything?
Yeah.
We were like, wait, we should do something. Um, and then of course, we were doing some online and some offline, but obviously with COVID, we went full online. And that's great because now we're actually able to kind of expand the number of students that any given coach or teacher can teach. And so we're able to really scale that up. And I think, you know, online is the future. You don't need to be offline, but
Mhm.
I do want to integrate more offline components to it. Like we actually have a PC cafe in Seoul, for instance, where it's a Genji PC cafe, and we have a stage, right? Like so you can play and all this stuff. So I can't wait until everybody's vaccinated and some of the craziness is over, because I think a mostly online but with amazing offline experiences model is going to be our future.
I'm asking because I want to try it out myself. And this year I was going to try to visit Korea, but if not, if you have an online option, I totally would love to try it. Because I think if from my One Piece comment, I think you'll notice that I have like obsessive personality. So one thing I'm obsessed with is still League of Legends. Like I play like 1,000 ranked games a year, but
Oh wow.
I don't have a coach, so I always get stuck at platinum or like a certain tier, and I know I what I should do is ask for help or watch video. I'm just so lazy. I just try to like grind it out myself. So
Yeah.
I would have like let's say 200 games where I'm making progress, and then 800 games where I'm just like winning, losing. And I'm like, you know what? I'd rather just spend the money because I like it so much. I feel like I really want to learn. So in the past, there were a couple startups doing this,
Mhm.
but then I think they went out of business. They were like Boston
Mm,
based. So
interesting.
I'm on your website now. I'm checking it out. So once they have
I
online
think
options, I'll
all
be
right now it's offered only in Korean, unfortunately, but
oh, okay.
we'll
I
definitely have
see.
more options for you to check out towards the
Nice.
end of the year.
Yeah.
And hey, who knows? Maybe we'll even have like a boot camp you can join. So that'd be
Yeah.
fun.
That yeah, I would be down for that because another tangent to all of this is, which is why I love that you mentioned education. So I've been doing since I got my MBA, I've been mainly doing games, PC games. I used to work at Riot, etc. And so customer base is typical, like 18 to 34 male, or even younger, 16 for teenagers. Lots of teenagers play all these games. When I was at Amazon, I was at Amazon Games, head of esports, Amazon Games. But then I switched to a team called Amazon Kids,
Hmm.
mainly because my manager offered me an opportunity to make like TV shows, and I was like,
Oh,
that
very
sounds
cool.
cool because like I live in LA, I've never worked in entertainment. This is like a cool opportunity. Like I want to make it. It's animated, but still, animated TV
Right,
shows.
right, right, right.
So as I started doing it on that team, I learned a lot about just like kids and education. And The reason I think you're spot on is because even for Amazon Kids, which is like a Netflix like service, but it includes games, audiobooks, and books. For like it's got all you can eat model for like $2.99 a month. When I looked at other services around the world, like Netflix is considered entertainment, but if you have education, you could charge even more. Especially like in and you could even it's crazy. You could charge more even in countries with lower like average salaries. Like in India, lots of
Mm.
people, so average is lower. But people in India would pay a lot for the best apps to educate their kids, right? And now, actually, I invested in this startup in LA called Synthesis. I like them so much. I actually work for them too part time. Just like, and what they do is they teach kids, like specifically 11 to I think 14-year-olds. I probably got that wrong. 8 to 14-year-olds,
Okay.
and they use games to teach them. Now
Hmm.
their games are more like HTML5,
Right, right,
but
right, right.
I've been talking with them a lot. I'm like, guys, like if you just leverage like League of Legends or any other team based game, just hire like a coach or whatnot. Like you could learn so much from that experience. Um,
A- and I think the other thing is if you look at the alternative, which is doing it yourself, getting angry at your jungler, you know, typing
yeah.
jungle diff every time you lose. By the way, I'm a jungle main, so I feel that
Oh,
pain.
nice, nice.
People always complain about, oh, gamers are toxic. Oh, gaming environment can be toxic. But I think the environment of you trying to get better alone is actually like very toxic in a way, right? Versus if you're trying to do it together as a team with a coach, it changes the interactions and you kind of see that the team is more important, right? So it's a different value you're learning, right? So
Hmm.
basically, I always think about I don't blame people for being toxic. I look at why is the system creating so much toxicity, right? And if I look at the system, I say you're basically forcing strangers to be in a team-based game. This is how basically like every single battle royale or any movie, like Lord of the Flies, like this is
Right,
exactly this
right.
is human nature for it to not work unless you set them up with the right structure to be able to be successful. But and this is the other thing too is a lot of pros, you'd be surprised, do not understand the math behind the game. A lot of the best pros are so freaking talented. They do it by feel. They actually don't spend a lot of time looking at the patch notes, looking at, how this thing versus that thing versus this thing. I think we do in the or I do if the best I ever got was plat, and like people in the middle like us, like we spend all day looking at this stuff.
Yeah, 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 100%.
The people at the extreme top 0.1% honestly do not look at this stuff as much as they should, right? I
Yeah.
mean, they know it more than most people, but like you would think that this is all they look at. Absolutely not, right? They're
Hmm.
worried about the team fight, they're worried about team play, they're worried about lane management, they're worried about so many other things that they don't look at this. And this is a really interesting opportunity though, right? Because when I was a kid, like I used to love computers, I used to love programming, but what was cool back then was basketball and sports and stuff like that. So I'm a terrible basketball player, but I would go and I would run track and do all the sports stuff and hang out with all these kids that told me what the cool stuff was, even though like secretly at home, like I loved games and that's what I was passionate about. But I think now we can help teach a lot of these things. Like for instance, imagine if you build a calculator for figuring out what kind of damage you're doing, right? If you have a specific, you know, build, right? Like that kind of stuff is very relevant, very minimal, knowledge, but all of a sudden they're using Excel for the right reason, right? Or they're actually
Yeah,
building something even
that's a
better
good
and more
point.
advanced on top. And it can open up a lot of people, but it could also be beneficial for the future pro. So I think the current crop of pros today got there by just being the best in the world and working harder than everybody else. But I think the next generation of pros will be the best, work the hardest, but also be super smart about how they approach. And I think that's the natural evolution that the league needs to happen.
It sounds like you've been a gamer your whole life,
A
but
bad one, but
still, like for me, I didn't even know gaming was a potential career opportunity until I did like a summer internship at Riot Games. So that's how I broke into the industry, which is also random that they even offered one for MBAs. But it was like the first or second year they were doing this. How did
Mhm.
how did you break into esports and gaming?
Actually, a pretty funny story. Yeah, I was a gamer all my life. When I looked at gaming jobs, to be honest, though, it looked like way too many hours for not enough pay, so I never did it.
Yeah.
Uh, so I actually started my career. Kind of going back to kind of where it
Yeah.
started. So I born and raised in LA. Now I about spend about half my time in LA, but I went to school in Boston. And then when I graduated, I actually started my first job in finance. So I was an investment banker at Goldman Sachs. So did that for a few years. Really didn't like it. Like it was the first time in my entire life I was making money, but it just was something wasn't I wasn't passionate about. I wasn't growing businesses. I wasn't building businesses. So I did what every a business person thinks they want to do when they say, "Oh, I want to learn about business," which is I go to management consulting. So I worked at Boston Consulting Group, and again, I was like, I'm kind of learning more operations, but I'm making a lot of decks. I'm not really doing anything. So it just wasn't like hitting that mark that I really wanted. So I decided to do a startup, which spectacularly failed. I got 150K in debt. But I fell in love with tech. I started learning how to code. I started learning how to do all this stuff that I was like always interested in. But I needed a real job because I was in debt. So I actually worked at Google. So I worked at Google and I worked in flight and hotel search, so Google Travel, helping launch the Google Hotel product. And then, you know, that's kind of where the gaming career started. And I say that because so I did two things at Google. One, at Google, a lot of times you don't work that hard. Like your hours are pretty chill, so you have a lot of free time. Um, and I did two things. I did intramural basketball, which we got first place. The other thing was I was one of the few mid to senior business guys participating in the League of Legends internal tournaments. And I got this reputation as like, wait, he's a guy that does basketball and he's kind of salesy, but he's a business guy. But he's like super into like this engineer like tournament that's like happening. And I thought nothing of it. I left to join kind of a growth stage startup and kind of got that to a Series C. Um, and then when I was kind of taking a break, I got a call from Kevin Chu, who had heard about me from one of my friends at Google because he was looking to start an esports thing, and he needed somebody that, has startup experience, loves games and esports, and ideally, understands the Korea market a little bit because that's at that point we were running only teams in Korea, and so one thing led to another, and it worked out, right? But that's why I always say like the advice I give is that like everything counts,
Hmm.
like don't do something if you're not going to go all in on it, and because you never know how the dots connect, right? And honestly, like I went into that meeting just for a coffee because I just thought it was like he just wanted to like kind of chat. I didn't know he was like recruiting people. Um, and I actually came prepared with because I looked at all the stuff he was doing and I had all these ideas and most of them were stupid. I came with a presentation. I was just like, hey, I put some thoughts together on like stuff that I'm noticing that I think is interesting. Like I want you to take a look, you know? And he was super impressed. The next day he's like, wait, let's get lunch next time. And we're getting lunch and he like slides over a piece of paper. I had no idea it was even a job interview. Slides over a piece of paper and he's like, dude, you got to join the team, right? But
Wow.
that's where like I haven't talked to Jimmy in a while, but like even when I have a lot of like younger people now come for like mentorship or advice, I say like don't come unprepared, being like I don't know what I want to do. Can you help me? Be like, hey, here's a couple areas that I'm looking at. Here's what I like. Here's what I don't like. I put some thoughts together. Like, what do you think? I'm gonna help that kid out a lot more than the kid that's the worst is when somebody asks you, "Can I ask you a question?" It's like, bro, don't waste my time.
Yes, I was just telling Jimmy and Austin about that because it was like a former student, and I want to help him out. He actually works at Facebook now too. It's like, hey, let's do like a little quick like mentor chat. I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And he didn't know what he
Right.
wants to even ask. So I was like, hey, let's pause it now. Like, just why don't you think about what do you want to do? Like, do you want to get like promoted? You want to get a better job? You want to? He was working in like a gaming adjacent team. Do you want to go full
Hmm.
on the gaming team like I am? Just tell me what you want, and then let's build like a plan to go get that.
Right.
Um, so I think preparation definitely is key, but I'm also cognizant that uh, for me, I don't know if lucky is the right word to call it. Is I missed the whole like financial disaster because I was in the military, which was great at the time because we like that didn't even impact me.
Hmm.
And then by the time I came out of the military, I was getting more like mid-level roles, and then it just went, like kind of a little bit linearly up and to the right from there. But I do because I have a lot of students at UC Irvine. They are just coming like from either high school or from college. It does seem super hard when you have like you're just starting from scratch,
Yep.
right? And I'm not even sure what the best advice you would give, but I kind of I've been telling folks that you know look, automatically the thing they would do is like Google you or like Jack from Cloud9. It's always like the CEO, the C-suite. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute. I don't think that's the best approach because you know you should be trying to aim for someone like one or two levels above you, right? Because you're probably recruiting like senior directors or directors, and even the advice you can give is generally good, but it's not going to be as relevant as someone who's like
Mm,
5 years out of college or 3 years out of college because they
right,
just went through
right.
that.
That's true.
Um,
That's
but
true.
I'm
I like
sure. I
that.
mean, because you've been in esports for 4 years now, I'm sure you get hit up all the time. Besides preparation, what do you normally tell people?
Differentiation, right? So, I still remember this person. She applied to a job, and her resume was a website about why she wanted to work at the company, right? Obviously, it's a template, with a little bit of customization, but I was like, damn, this is different, right? Another person sent a video or, but like, just know that if you send a resume and expect your specs to do the job, especially if you're not one of these like rich kids with all these connections, like I was poor, like I grew up with nothing. I, self-funded my way through like latter half of high school and college. Like I had to hustle, right? And I hate it when I see people that just complain and don't hustle and don't find the back door, you know? And I think it's hard. Like, look, when I was growing up, I didn't have those connections. And then when I tried to make those connections, it seemed fake because it was fake, you know? Um, so find the other way. If you're not that sociable person and you're not like a golden tongue that just makes everybody love them, go find something else that differentiates you, right? Whether it's how you apply to the job, whether it's a presentation that you make that you send to the person, whether it's, some analysis you do, or so a good example is like the other one is do the job before you apply for it. So a good example is people talk about, hey, I want to join the marketing team. I think I understand social media. And I was like, cool, let me see your social media account. And it's private. And you're like, all right, bro. Like, okay, so did you manage a social media account? Like, how big did you grow? It's like, oh, well, we were busy. And I was like, if you were busy in college, don't talk
Yeah.
to me. Like, I'm old school. I probably shouldn't say that. Some people are genuinely busy and have stuff going on in their lives, but like a lot of people that say they're busy do not understand what actually being busy means,
No, you
and it
are
frustrates me.
you are you are spot on. And you know what? I'll connect this to League of Legends. So you main jungle, I main support. And let's just say if you're just playing like ranked, generally like if I'm support and I'm trying to egg my team on, I try to egg my team on to like invade every game. And if 3 out of 5
It's
don't want to
fun.
do it, it's a bad idea,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I know what I shouldn't do, but I do it anyways. So example is, yes, I ultimately got that job at Amazon, but of course it was through networking. The first 24 times I applied, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
So it was my 25th time when, and by the way, and also even the first 24 times I got a couple calls back, but the truth is I was lazy as shit. Like I didn't make that website. I went in and they were like, "Oh, tell me about yourself," and I was just like, I didn't even know anything about the role. I didn't try. But by my 20, see, I'm slow, but I learned. See, by my 25th time, when I actually got that on site, I made a 20-page Google Doc. I researched every interviewer. I try to find LinkedIn connections, like little small talk, whatever,
Yeah.
thank you cards on the spot. And then it's no surprise I got that job.
Yeah.
And same thing, like when you go for more senior roles, uh, I remember I was actually interviewing for I don't know if I can talk about this, but well, it's too late. So I was interviewing for like essentially like a head of esports role at Activision Blizzard. So it would have been like a. They actually didn't end up going for that role, but uh, I could have just shown up for the interview. But I was
Mm.
like, dude, if I'm gonna interview with like Bobby Kotick, I better be fucking prepared. So Amazon, we have this like we don't do PowerPoints, so we only do 6-page documents.
Yep, yep, yep.
I wrote a 6-page document on what Activision Esports should be, and I had a really good talk with Bobby like on a Sunday morning. And even though it ultimately didn't work out, I feel good because like I feel like, hey, I give it my best because that's
Yeah,
the worst feeling isn't not getting it. Because look, those kind of roles, they've got like 20 great candidates, right?
yeah.
So I think I was just happy to be grateful to be in contention, but I didn't want it to be the situation where I didn't show up prepared at all, and then I look like a jackass. And then
Yeah,
two, the worst part is it's like the what ifs. Like, oh, what if
exactly.
I did prepare, but
Yeah,
you
what
didn't?
if you actually did the thing? But I think the other part too is that like, you know, in terms of luck, I know I'm lucky. Like people have given me a shot, and I was prepared for the shot, but if they didn't give me the shot, then it doesn't matter how prepared I am, right? And I know that's the case for a lot of people, but the one thing that I feel really lucky about today is that like it's a lot easier to be prepared when I'm doing something that I'm passionate about, right? Because then, like, the 6-page doc probably helps you now understand your industry better. So it's not a waste anymore. It's like, yeah, this is just what I do because I want to be better every day at what I do. And it's less about like, did I get it or did I not get it? But it's more like, did I come in and am I adding more stuff or basically am I adding more shit to my toolkit, right? So I don't know if I'm allowed to curse, but
Yeah, sure.
but like that mentality is like a winner's mentality, right? And like it's hard sometimes when you're getting so many no's,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
I'll be very honest. Like I was actually in London and I had straight A's. I wasn't getting any. This is junior year in college, and I was like, at that point, I was going to this like local church every day, sitting there by myself, just like miserable, and then going back to the library and applying for more jobs and everything else. And the first internship call came because my professor in Boston, because I was doing a study abroad, um, had a friend that was recruiting kind of off cycle, and he remembered that I had like did the best investment presentations, that I had the best stock portfolio, and won these like awards and stuff. And he was like, hey, do you know anybody? And I was like, oh shit, like me. Me, choose me.
yeah, yeah.
But I think it's like you never know when that break is gonna come. You kind of have to have that faith, whatever, if it's
Hmm.
religious or personal or
Hmm.
crystals or I don't know what people believe in these days. But like you gotta just think of it as like if you're working in a direction that you're passionate about, man, like it's just you're just getting more prepared for the opportunity, right? You don't know what it's gonna be, right? And it's
Yeah,
even if you didn't get the Activision job, I mean, a lot of people that did like are like having
yeah,
really
yeah.
struggling right now, right? So, um,
And no, I think you are well, just spot on again because a lot of folks, yes, there's luck involved, but I mean, when you look at all the successful people, they really just like they kind of to some degree made their own luck as well. Like I just read this article about LeBron James' agent, right? It was on I think it was on ESPN
amazing.
or something. And I read it, and yes, he got lucky. He was lucky because he met LeBron James when he was 18, and they were at the airport, and he sold him like a jersey. But the fact that he was hustling and selling jerseys already at the age of
Exactly.
18, I wasn't doing that. And that's the
Yep.
thing. I remember when I was 18, and that's why I'm glad I joined the military because I kind of was like a spoiled kid.
Hmm.
I had a couple internships during college, and I was working in New York, not in like investment banking, but just like adjacent finance, like it was like AIG or some other finance companies.
Hmm.
And I remember when I was growing up, like internships were like hazing. Like my first day of the internship, they're like, "Hey, go build that IKEA desk." And I had so much stupid pride that I was like, "I'm here to do a finance job. I'm not gonna do that." And then they were like, "Okay, then don't come back.
Yeah.
Then don't come
Yeah.
back."
Yeah.
And it really took me to when I was in the military and I was like in boot camp and I was cleaning toilets with a toothbrush. Then I'm like, okay, this is what I needed. Like I needed to
Hmm.
know what it is to do some like real hard work with my hands. And by the way, you can't leave. You're like, if you leave, it's you get court martialed. So that's what I needed. I needed like to be forced to do it. And that's what really changed my whole mindset. And actually, that's why I really align. I think you eloquently described like a life system I believe in, and I still adopt it, which is like any interview I get, whether I've been, whether I like my job or not, I always want to, have that backup. And it's not work because I'm just learning more about this specific field in gaming
Right.
that I love. So it's like, why wouldn't I get smarter? It's like spending 3 hours a night just to get smarter, and with
Yeah.
the upside of a potential, advising role or a new job or whatever.
Yeah. And I think it's hard, right? Like
Hmm.
I know like getting a job these days is hard. And my only other advice is like I think about it like this, right? Like let's say the topic of unpaid internships is like the perfect example, which
Oh
is
yeah.
I fundamentally disagree as a company of doing unpaid internships. So we refuse because I say, you know what? I only want to do paid work because I think it's wrong. But I say, don't let the ideal distract you from if there's an unpaid internship for an individual that's going to help them, you shouldn't think, oh, it's wrong, I'm not going to do it. You should think, is it going to help me or not, and then go do it, right? You know what I mean? And like I think a lot of people get caught up in like the Twitter anger of whatever the du jour is of what
Hmm.
people are angry about, that like 99.9% of the people on Twitter don't even know who you are and they don't care about you, right? Like you have
Right.
to figure out, yeah, an unpaid internship is wrong, but is that going to help you? Is that going to be your
Hmm.
foot in the door for something big, right? And then when you do get it, hopefully you're in a position later on where you're no longer doing that and you stop unpaid internships in your company and help change the industry later on. So
Hmm.
I just think that's the other thing too. People get so caught up in the anger and the back and forth and the binary nature of Twitter and what's out there that like that stuff doesn't matter. Like you got to focus on your stuff, right? And that's the other advice I give to a lot of like especially younger folks. It's I see a lot with like new grads and young grads. They want to like get so angry about something, whatever. Both sides, by the way. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that stuff doesn't affect you. It doesn't help you. It's not going to pay the bills. Like, what's going to really help you? And go get it. And that's it's something that I've been surprised by because we're same age. Like I didn't really have Facebook. Like I had like the thing where you add everybody in college and you poke each other. Like that was Facebook. It
Right,
wasn't
right, right.
really. There was no
Yeah.
Instagram. I didn't have any
Right.
followers. I didn't have to deal with that kind of pressure. And
Right. Right.
there's a lot that I don't understand about it. But
Hmm.
I do see a lot of people get caught up in it and not think about like what's going to help them and how do they move that forward.
Awesome. Well, Arnold, this has been a great conversation. I thought we were going to talk about more about like growth and esports, and we did cover some of that. But I think the key highlights I have from this conversation really is just it's like a life framework, whether you're entry level or not. Like, how do you want to tackle life? How do you make your own luck? And well, I'm biased because I agree with you. So
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
We should probably have somebody that doesn't agree in that.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah, I just want to say thank you for joining us today, and I would love to check out. I'm gonna follow the Genji Academy, and all the other stuff you guys are working on. Like this is like innovation, so pretty awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, and we're doing a lot of cool stuff on the esports side too. So we always want to do more, and any opportunities, especially working with colleges and that kind of stuff. We're always excited because it's kind of landing homes for some of the best talent out here in Korea that their dream is to go to U.S. universities, right? And
Mm,
so
it's true.
hopefully, if there's anybody ever that have any ideas or want to reach out, feel free. I'm on Twitter. My email is on there, so I'm always happy to kind of respond, and especially if somebody has a good idea or anything like that. So